Okay, let's make a start. Everyone can hear and see me okay?
Yeah.
Fine. Okay. This is the third and final session of this particular series. And interestingly, it's probably the one that I consider to be the most practically useful one in daily life. I think it's one of the areas where we are constantly plagued by, and that is to have some level of control over the ambience of our mind, is the way I call it. And especially in this day and age where our minds are being assailed like never before. Now, let's look at what thought process is. Thought process is the level of communication that's most adjacent to the soul. In other words, its most innermost form of communication. It's self-communication, but it's also projection. It's also the use of imagination, and it's also the capacity to be able to test oneself. But just like the soul is a perpetual motion machine, so is thought ongoing. And our capacity to control it, to start and stop it, are much more limited as a consequence. In the same way as you can't stop your soul, God forbid, it's very difficult to control and stop your thoughts. When we extend beyond our body, we have much greater control. Speaking, you extend beyond your body, and therefore you've got more control over whether to speak or to be silent, and even what you say. Although that's not always easy, as many people realize. Actions, behavior, you've got much greater control over because the neshama is being extended further from the body, as you've heard me say on previous occasions. So your capacity to be able to control it is much more finite. But we're dealing with thoughts. We're going to be dealing with thoughts and feelings today. And I want to be very, very practical today. What I'd like to do this evening is to provide you with some mechanisms that you can actually employ so that you can begin to train the way of controlling your mind and emotions. Now, firstly, the proposition. One can always control one's mind and emotions. I know that many people would like to share the cop-out, which is you can't control your mind, but the answer is you definitely can. It's not so much controlling. The word controlling has a certain negative connotation. It's more what I like to call to be an artist of the soul. In other words, to be able to design the way that your thoughts express your soul. And if you don't like the color, if you don't like the shade, if you don't like the shape, you have the capacity as an artist to alter it and change it. All right, easier said than done perhaps, but let's see what we can do today. What I'd like to do is introduce you to a methodology which I've used extensively and very successfully with people called thought substitution. Thought substitution is based on a very simple proposition which you've heard me say also before, and that is you can't think of two things at the same time. No one can think of two things at the same time. You can oscillate very quickly between two thoughts, backwards and forwards, and maybe even three for some, but never identically in the same instant, two thoughts. Therefore, let's use that to advantage. If you are thinking, imagining something which is unpleasant that you don't want to think about, you don't want your body to be affected by it, you don't want your relationships to be affected by it, then how do you actually change that thought? Well, you become an artist and you recreate another thought in its place. You draw a new thought picture and you're able to displace it. Because you can't think of two things at the same time, where you choose to place your thoughts, that's where they will be. The Baal Shem Tov often made the statement, you are where your thoughts are. And you need to be able, therefore, to choose freely where you want your thoughts to be. Are there any questions on this? Does anyone have any doubts? Have people tried to change their thoughts? Okay, so these are just rhetorical questions, perhaps. So the exercise, yes, please, go ahead.
I just have a little sort of thought.
Speak up.
I do that, but I use my imagination to create an image which takes a negative thought and shrinks it to a small point, and then just get rid of the point. So it's an image creation.
Yes, that's a very good way to put it. The problem with most people is that they actually extemporize. It's a bit like jazz. In other words, not necessarily well rehearsed, but intuitive and on the spot. And sometimes it comes out really well in a jamming session, and sometimes it just doesn't work. And what I'm going to be saying this evening is that, unfortunately, you have to rehearse this technique and practice it. And practice it, and practice it. So it's not just the intuitive use of imagination at the time, I don't like this thought, let me replace it, but you actually have a repertoire, and you're able to call on the repertoire at will because it's well rehearsed and it's well practiced. So it'll be just a further development of what you've said. Any other question? Yes?
Laibl, do our thoughts come from the soul, or does our consciousness override it?
So, Ilana, everything comes from the soul that we call consciousness. So, when it comes to thought, it's the soul moving through the machinery of brain. The result is thought process. There are other experiences that we also have as a consequence of the neshama flowing through the brain, and they include all our other communication systems of speech and behavior, but thought is the most personal expression of it. So thought is always an expression of the soul. It's not a perfect expression because life here is an obstacle course. And we need to be able to navigate the obstacle course successfully. So we have choices in terms of our thought processes. But the answer is yes, thought is an expression of the soul, but you have a choice as to the trajectory of the thought. You can think positively, you can think negatively. So you have choice as to how you allow the soul to present itself in the world of here and now. Yes, in the back there. Was that it? Yes.
The question, I guess, comes to intuition versus and automatic responses versus
yes,
thought-out processes to realign yourself to a positive outcome.
Yes.
Where does the soul,
yeah.
I mean, does the soul in fact express itself through automated responses? And should we allow that to be able to occur naturally as it may happen, or to redirect those thought processes or those feelings, emotions, those reactions which might come up at that point in time to be able to suit what is we perceive on a conscious level that is actually good for us?
When we use the word automatic responses, of course, we're not quite sure what we're talking about, but what we probably mean is responses that are so habituated, so practiced, not necessarily intentionally, that they operate with minimum of mind input, and therefore they appear to be automatic. But I would like to suggest, for definition purposes, that automatic responses are really conscious responses that have an element of mind input, but very, very little because they're so habituated, as opposed to intuitive responses. The word intuition suggests something different in English than does the word automatic. Automatic has a sense of lack of consciousness. Intuition has a level of consciousness implicit within it. And in Jewish spiritual teachings, intuition is extremely rare, true intuition. Intuition is when the soul bypasses both the mind and the heart. That's extremely rare. Most instances where people think that they're responding intuitively is really habituated responses. But I'm not sure that makes very, very much difference between the two in 95%, if not 99% of all life circumstances.
So in the example where you are in either physical or emotional danger at a split second, your automated or intuitive response will be a certain way.
Yes. Your soul's most primary motivation is to remain fixed to the body, because the body is its medium of carrying out its journey in its lifetime. So the soul needs the body and sticks to the body, so to speak. And when the body is in danger, that is the first most major signal for the neshama to act almost instantaneously. And therefore the pleasure and pain principle causes us to respond almost immediately in terms of that. When there's a fear that the body and the soul are going to be separated, and we call that death, for example, then the neshama acts even faster than the body, and you can call that intuitive, you can call that by many words that are used in the English language to try to describe when the soul bypasses the body in order to respond. Okay, so let's get down to tonight's practice. What I'm going to ask you to do first is as follows. While seated there, not necessarily meditating at all, I want you to come up in your mind, in your recollection, in your memory banks, with a circumstance in your life, some of you have done this before, a circumstance in your life which was the most wonderful, beautiful, impacting experience that you have had, whether as a child or as an adult. Now I'm going to give you a minute or so to have a search in your memory banks to find one such moment. You probably had more than one, but I want you to find one that is truly powerful for you. So just close your eyes and try to think back and find a circumstance. And let's begin by finding one as a child, when you felt absolutely fantastic, elated, ecstatic, happy, excited. Okay. Has everyone had an opportunity to locate one? Has anyone not been able to locate one? All right. If you haven't yet located, keep thinking. That's fine. For the rest of you, what I want you now to do is to find a second such moment, but this time as an adult. When I say adult, I mean from, say, 18 onwards or thereabouts. It doesn't really matter. It's quite arbitrary. I want you to find another moment where there's been profundity, depth, impact, beauty, where you felt really moved. It might have been a novel, it might have been a film, it might have been an encounter, it might have been an event. Whatever might be the case, something that moved you really profoundly. And I'm going to give you 60 seconds to try to come up with that particular image. Okay. And I want you now to choose a third one. But the third one's a little different. I want you to choose your favorite piece of music, song, refrain, whatever might be the case. And I want you to be able to hear that music no matter how it's played, whether you hear it instrumentally, voice, over iPod, radio, whatever. And I want you just to spend 60 seconds listening to it in your mind, and if you can actually observe a musician playing it, if not yourself, all the better. So 60 seconds, your favorite piece of music, song or otherwise, no matter who's playing it. Okay. I'd like you to indicate to me as follows. How many of you found it easier to conjure up an image as a child out of all the three possibilities? Hands up if you found it easier to conjure up an image as an adult. Now, I think my screen froze when I said child. Hands up again those who found it easier as a child. Okay, good. And how many of you found it easiest as a piece of music? Okay, fine. I offered all three because it depends on your own particular personality and the way that you operate. What I'd like you to do now is prioritize those three. Number one is the one that you found easiest to call to mind. Number two is the one you found second easiest. And number three is obviously number three, okay? And what we're going to do now is still in non-meditative state. I'm going to ask you to practice oscillating between these three. So I'm going to give you the cue line, and I'm going to say, I'd like your mind to be fulfilled with, and you'll choose that particular one. Initially, I'll go in order, but then I'm going to mix them up. And this will be just advanced practice, and then we'll do it much more profoundly in a deeper state. So with your eyes still closed, I'd like you to be able to conjure up right now your number one. Spend time there. 20 seconds at least continuously. Now number two. Switch to number two. And now switch to number three. Okay, open your eyes. That should not have been easy. And it will take time before you can do those things at will, as you choose to. And that's fine, because I'm talking about a technique that'll take perhaps a month of daily practice before it does become something that you can actually insert into your life at will and readily, which is how you want it to be practiced as such. So what we're going to do is I'm going to ask you to move into a relaxed state, which I'll guide you through in a moment. I'm going to ask you then to call up a challenge that you have faced or may be facing. And then I'm going to ask you to insert those slides, which I'll call them from now on. Slide 1, slide 2, slide 3. And we'll do it in a much more profound level. And that way we can begin to change the pathways of your within the brain so that you can become more and more proficient in slipping the slides in as needed, which is removal of a negative thought and supplanting it with a positive thought. Now, of course, I'm the first one to say to you, by doing it for 20 seconds or 30 seconds is not going to change the fact that negative thoughts don't arise. They do arise. But you'll find that as you practice this system more and more, A, they arise less. 2, they last much shorter. And after a while, they tend to disappear. Okay, so put everything out of your hands. Put it on the ground, notes and the like. Put your feet symmetrically on the ground, hands resting on knees and thighs. Back fairly straight, head well balanced, and gently close your eyes. Just focusing on your breath, gently breathing in and breathing out. Through your nose if you can. Just become aware of your chest moving, which means we have to relax more. So focus on your nose and feel the breath in and out. Feel its movement. Feel its temperature. And in the background, become aware that your chest is moving less, which is a sign of relaxation, because your breath deepens deeper down in the abdomen. Continuing focusing on your nose, the air entering and exiting. And draw a deeper, slower breath in and out. Beginning to feel the relaxation response. And allow the breath to flow deeper into your body. And as you breathe in, expand your abdomen to collect the air, and then contract your abdomen to expel the air. So as you breathe in, tummy out, and as you breathe out, tummy in. And your chest should be relatively still now, so that the abdomen is doing the pumping. Slow, deep breaths assist that. smooth and graceful. Being aware of the air temperature in your nostrils, the movement of your abdomen, and the depth of relaxation that you are achieving. With each deeper breath, you become more relaxed, allowing your shoulders to drop, your fingers to soften, and feeling very at ease with yourself. I want you to bring to mind a challenge that you are either currently facing or have faced in your life, not a pleasant one. And spend just a little time considering it. Feel a little bit of the tightness within as the negative thought occupies conscious space. It's not pleasant. It can be hurtful. It may not appear soluble. It induces a little bit of pain, emotional pain. Now bring to mind slide number 1. Allow that beautiful moment to occupy fully your brain. Allow all your 5 senses to explore the slide. Who is present? What might they be wearing? What time in the day might it be? What are the colours around you? Clothing, nature, room, sky. What are you hearing? Voices, sounds, laughter, how are you feeling? If you were a third party, how would you see your face? Your body behavior. Can you feel your heart beating? Happy, joyfully. Feel the sense of oneness with people, with person, with yourself. Allow yourself to elevate with the absolute beauty of the moment. Feeling oh so happy. And now move to slide number 2. Gently allow it to enter into your mind consciousness. Let it occupy that space and enjoy it. Focus on what your eyes see at that time. What your ears hear. Note your feelings back then. And just be aware how you can create total consciousness by choice. And enjoy that moment back then, right now. Allow yourself to transcend time and feel that joy. And now insert slide 3. Take your time. It'll be a little longer for it to occupy that space because it is number 3. But let it emerge. First visually. What you see there. What elevates you by it. The sound or sounds. It may be a voice. It may be instrumentation. And feel the quality of this kind of enjoyment. which might be a little different and yet very moving. And come back to your breath, being aware of the breath right now entering your nostrils and breathing out, feeling the gentle passage of the air. Noting its temperature. Become aware of any sounds in the room where you're seated. Subtle sounds, there all the time, but may not have registered. Begin moving your fingers and your toes right now in the room. Move your fingers, move your toes, and when you feel ready, start to open your eyes, coming all the way back into the room. Okay, give me some feedback. Anybody? Anything that, yes?
Why was it necessary to plant that initial thought, the negative thought? Just in order to remove it?
Yes, you have to experience your success in displacing a negative thought. I mean, life isn't one where you can spend all day simply contemplating positive thoughts. Unfortunately, life has its way of testing us, and one of those is that we read things negatively and we feel negative reminders of the past and the like, and therefore, yes, you're quite correct. The reason was to you experience that you have the capacity to displace it. Any challenge? Yes, in the back there.
How do you find a solution to a problem if you've displaced the thought?
You don't. Displacing a thought will not solve the problem. This isn't a problem-solving exercise. I'm the first one to admit to you that problems need to be solved or attempted to be solved. However, what I'm doing here is knowing that ruminating on negative thoughts affects you profoundly health-wise and also affects relationally and otherwise, I'm trying to alleviate that aspect of it. To actually have a problem-solving device and mechanism and tools, that requires quite other skills and a different kind of session. But I'm the first one to admit that this isn't a problem-solving exercise, yet it's got great merit because it will save you endless ill health and problematic responses to people because your mind is elsewhere rather than being positively disposed to them.
Is the idea to try to extend that? Let's say you have a situation where early in the morning, typical time when you have ruminating thoughts. So
yes.
You plant this positive thought in your head. Is the idea to try to extend it further
yes.
and further?
Okay, so there are several possibilities where it can go, which is where your question is heading. people have characteristic times when they tend to ruminate negatively. Some people tend to ruminate in the morning upon awakening. Others tend to ruminate at night when they go to sleep. The truth is that when our mind is unoccupied or unfocused because there's no demands on it, then what happens is the default pictures enter into the mind, the habitual ones. And therefore, people who have practiced many years thinking negatively, that's the first things that come to mind. And what we want to do is unlearn that. So yes, the longer the better, but it's only a way of breaking the chain of thought pattern so that you're changing your default as time goes on and changing the habit of your thought as time goes on. Something like this, if you were to be training with me, I would have you doing it at least 3 times a day for a month, but changing slightly the variations on the theme so it becomes more and more impactful within your brain.
And this isn't like these thoughts that we put in our head now. Obviously, you can take another thought that seems to be more powerful than that one.
Of course. That's why I asked you for the most powerful thought. Usually people will come first up with their most powerful thoughts. But sometimes I find with individuals that it may fade, or they may remember something which is even more powerful, and by all means substitute it. The idea is to have something easy by way of a slide to put in. If it's something which is not so wonderful and beautiful, your motivation to slip that slide in is going to be less. And I want something which is highly motivating. Okay, I want to do one more little exercise if you still have a few more moments to spend with me. And this one's a little bit different. I'm going to ask you to look at the person in a moment who is sitting next to you, preferably men with men, women with women. It works better that way. And I'm going to ask you to each one by one smile at each other, your biggest, most wonderful smile. And I want you to do this once to each other and to allow that smile, and I'm not exaggerating, to stay there for 20 seconds. You're going to discover how long 20 seconds actually are by this exercise. And I want you to be able to picture that person's smile and memorize it. Bring it up to your mind, be able to bring it up to your mind at will. Okay, so find a person. If you need to move out of your seat to find that person, by all means do so. Pair up and tell me anyone who doesn't have a pair and up from some thousands of miles put you together with somebody. Now, one by one, and I'll give you the timing. I'm going to tell you when to start, when to stop. You have to decide who's first or second. Could you make that decision now? Who's going to be first? Who's going to be second? Good. Okay, you make the decision. And in one group, who's going to be third? All right. And in a moment, I'm going to tell the first person to put on their most wonderful, broad smile. And I'm going to time you, and I'm going to tell you when 20 seconds are up. And I want you to keep that smile. And the receiver of the smile, memorize it, watch it. Just be very aware of it. Okay? Number one, begin now. Okay, stop. I'm hoping that wasn't an ordeal. All right, it should be something beautiful. All right, now number two, get yourself ready and begin. Number two. Okay. Fine, up there. And one group only and everyone can watch you. Number 3. Okay. Pause and listen. Now that was just the practice round. This time, but for only 10 seconds, I'm going to ask you to repeat it, but I want the person visualizing, the receiver of the smile, to observe not just the smile, but I want you to observe everything about the face that glows, that smiles. I want you to see the whole body smiling. I want you to recognize all the slight nuances of that smile being expressed through the nose, through the glistening eyes, through the forehead, through the skin, through the ears, whatever there is. Okay, so number 1, get ready to smile. Begin. Okay, stop. Number 2, get ready, go. Okay, and in one group, number 3, go. All right, stop. Now what I'm going to ask you to do is as follows. This particular exercise is a very simple exercise. It's an exercise not dissimilar to what you did before, but it's to change emotional states as opposed to thought states, to change feelings. So that when you're feeling something negative as opposed to thinking, and please note that all feelings ultimately do arise from thoughts, so automatically when you change your thoughts, you do change your feelings. But put that aside at the moment. This will be more immediate impact. What I'm going to ask you to do is, I want you to, in a moment, memorize the other person's smile and test yourself. And you'll do that by closing your eyes in a moment, and I'm going to give you time to bring that other person's smile into your mind. And you don't have to have the lights off or anything like that. We won't do it profoundly. We'll just do it so that you're able to make your storage banks of your mind record that. So gently close your eyes. And I want you to bring to mind the other person's smile. The teeth, the lips, the nose, the eyes, the forehead, the eyebrows, the posture. And see how long you can hold it. Okay, gently open your eyes. Hands up if you were able to hold that other person's smile in your mind during the duration of that latter 15 seconds. Were you able to bring that? Good, excellent, all right. I want people to give me feedback as to what they were feeling as they were observing the other person's smile. Yes, in the back.
Joy.
Joy, yes.
Happiness.
Happy, yes.
Peace of mind.
Okay. You're obviously not surprised by that, and you shouldn't be. That's commonsensical. But it is something which is terribly valuable. Because when you have negative feelings, Joy, simcha, is a very, very easy antidote. But a lot of people say, but I have nothing to be happy about. I've now given you something to be joyful about, the other person's smile. And I want you, if you can, to always bring the other person's smile to your mind once a day for the rest of your life. And I assure you, it'll leave a very profound impact. And here you have a person who happens to be seated next to you, creating joy and happiness in your life and having the capacity to change your feelings. Now, if you recognize that, recognize someone else. Whenever you walk in the street, whenever you're driving the car, if you smile at people, you change their lives. You need a bit of courage, especially in this day and age, but nevertheless, I'd like you to practice that smile as you're walking past people and driving past people, and especially in your home environment where we take these things for granted. Any final questions or thoughts for this evening?
Earlier we talked about the soul instantly stepping in if there's danger of being disconnected from the body. So
Yes.
why isn't it always running on high alert?
It is always running on equally high alert. The soul is a constant. It has a constant frequency. It has a constant state of being. It's the body that modulates its flow. And we have choice as to whether to make the body more acute or less acute, more appropriately and less appropriately. And therefore, what we do is the body becomes like the volume button, which we are able to turn ourselves. Sometimes it's important to turn down the volume, especially when you're wanting to fall asleep. Sometimes you want the volume turned up if you're, as you say, approaching a dangerous situation. So you have the capacity to change the volume button, or that's used only as an example, of course, in your consciousness, to be able to allow that same soul with identical power, identical nature to flow more forcefully or less forcefully according to the needs of the moment.
Thank you.
Laibl, I want to say goodbye.
Yes.
I want to say goodbye. I have to go because Esther is by herself. Okay? And I want to
Yes.
thank you immensely for that three evenings. It was exceptionally good. So, look forward to see you, B'Shah Tova, in Melbourne.
Micha, as I always say, you can fool all the people some of the time.
Go to.
Well, have a lovely evening. See you when I get back soon.
Hope so.
By the way, I should mention that the next meditation series is going to be run by a very, very special young lady. You're going to very much enjoy her. Her approach is different, but you get a different sense of how meditation can work. And I think you're going to very much enjoy Zoe Cannett. So look out for the flyer that will come to your way on Zoe Cannett's series of 3. And is she in the room? Waving in the back. Zoe, hi, I didn't see you all the way back there. So please make sure you check this very special lady out. She's going to enrich your life very, very profoundly. Be well, have a lovely week. Bye now.
Bye.